Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we will do a deep dive on Stasher, the first backup and restoration tool for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. My name is Zuzana. I am a Salesforce Marketing Cloud architect at Deloitte Digital. I am also a Salesforce MVP and the leader of the Poznań Salesforce Marketer Group. And our guests today are Tony Zupancic and Stephen Douglas, the founders of Stasher. So guys, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Steve, you want to kick us off?
Sure. My name's Stephen Douglas. I own a agency that's called Avigate. Avigate is specialized in micro SaaS solutions, which is one of here representing as Stasher. Stasher is an independent LLC out of the US. We built it from the ground up when Tony and I met and said this problem of Marketing Cloud is extremely the Marketing Cloud is extremely powerful, but what we have is some fragile nuances that we all probably are aware of in Marketing Cloud that we're hoping to solve for. And this micro SaaS utility is one that when Tony and I met, we're like, this is something we need to build. So my background in Marketing Cloud has been around since Exact Target days. So something is a long time in the Marketing Cloud world. And this is one of my most favorite solutions that we came out with. We've come out with a couple others, but this one is one that I'm really proud of. And Tony is the man behind the engineering here. So give you a brief intro there, Tony.
Sure. So I am Tony Zupancic. I am part of the Marketing Champions program, one of the co-founders of How to SFMC, and I've been in the space for around 6.5 years now. And this is a tool that I wish when I was in the weeds with client work, I would have had, doing a lot of development stuff and doing a lot of Marketing Cloud stuff. Things happen, and I wish I would have had this tool. So I'm really, really excited to be part of building this and bringing this into the Marketing Cloud ecosystem, because as Steve said, it's something that is a need. It's something that not a lot of people think of front of mind until you absolutely need it. So really excited to bring it to the space for sure. So do you want to, let's give a high level overview of what Stasher is. Does that sound good, Steve?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Cool. So Stasher, it is backup and recovery for Salesforce Marketing Cloud engagement across any context that we're able to get our hands on through the APIs. What Stasher really aims to do is simplify that process of being able to back something up and also being able to recover those assets back into Marketing Cloud without having to have that in-depth technical knowledge of version control and that developer workflow. So with that, let's jump into a quick demo of what we can do within Stasher and how Stasher really works as you're going through and setting it up. So just making sure, can you guys see my screen where I have Stasher up?
Yeah? Yes.
Cool. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go through what we do as far as setting up a configuration. So a configuration is folder-based backups. And what that means is you go in and you set up your name and your schedule. That is going to be the automated backup schedule for when Stasher is going to run this configuration. And you select folders. So here we're going to have content builder, and I'm going to select a data extension folder as well. So the reason we select folders is it's a starting point for this configuration, and any folders, any assets that you add in the future are automatically going to be part of this backup configuration. So you don't have to worry about modifying a configuration to accommodate for new assets or new subfolders being included. So once you have your configuration set up, you can go in and see what the actual content of your configurations are. And then same thing for the data extensions. You can see the actual schema of what's being backed up currently. Once you are happy with it, you can go ahead and hit the save and close. That's going to make that first initial commit. It's going to tell Stasher, this is a backup I want saved. Now Stasher knows to pick it up whenever that configuration is scheduled and automatically run that backup. So one thing to note around the automated backups is if there are no differences between what's that backed up state and what's in Marketing Cloud currently, Stasher's not going to make a commit. It's not going to back that up simply because it doesn't really need to. And we don't want to have a whole lot of bloat on your end to say, where are my changes at? Where have things changed? So we're trying to be mindful around that aspect to make it straightforward on the user end for sure. So now we have our configuration set. Stasher is going to handle that. So now imagine you get an email or something that says, something was off in an email personalization. Can you troubleshoot that? So I'm going to go ahead and go into another configuration that I have set up here. What Stasher is going to do is it's going to grab the existing snapshot of what's in Git, and it's going to grab the snapshot of what's in Marketing Cloud and do a diff check. So here I can see my configuration is run, so it's up to date. I can go in here and see when the last configuration was run that has a difference. And here you can see in Automation Studio, there's a difference. You can go in, drill down to the steps, drill down to the SQL query, and you can see that there is a difference in the SQL query. Now, I know that not everyone wants to sit here and look at a JSON object to see what exactly has changed. So we can go in and see exactly what's changed in a content view. So you'll be able to see a little bit more specifically what exactly has changed. So right here, we're looking at a SQL query. And on line 6, there's been a change. So this is a very basic example. But if you imagine a more complex SQL query that has a ton of joins or case statements, you'll be able to see specifically what's changed in that fairly complex query. So now I want to go in and remedy the situation. In this case, for example, you can go in, just change that query straight away and get back up and running. But in a more complex scenario, you might want to actually test it out before moving forward and putting it into your production instance. So I can go ahead and hit this recovery options, recover my modified definitions, and this is going to recover that SQL query. And it's also going to create a separate data extension for this recovery so that you can actually test it all within isolation. So if I go into Automation Studio, and if I go into my activities, now I can see that in my SQL queries, it has a new version of this SQL query that I can now go into, see that the recovered version has been rolled back. And then if I take a look at the target data extension, you can see that it's tying directly into that newly created target data extension. So we can now run this, get it back up and running, and test it before we put it back into our production automation. So that's one thing around Automation Studio is that it really tries to stitch those dependencies all together. So wherever there's a dependency in a definition, it's going to back those up and it's going to stitch them back together on your recovery action.
Let me stop you right here, Tony.
Sure.
So what we're describing is really like an admin level task here, where the problem is that the SQL query was altered, and the alternative is having to have notes, documentation, some way, a process of knowing what changed, when it changed. And we all wish that we knew who changed it, but Marketing Cloud APIs don't provide us that knowledge. But what I think is interesting here is that the other options on the table of figuring this out don't like it's like a needle in the haystack. Would you agree, Tony?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been many times when I've been on the agency side or even brand side where I'll be managing a project and, something in a deep nested content block changes, and having to figure out exactly what's changed can take, hours to figure that out. And that's where Stasher really excels, is being able to find that change in that long list of assets that you have backed up in your configuration.
So in a non-developer world, this is like the Wayback Machine for Marketing Cloud, where we can actually roll something back, see something that was in the past, and be able to get an insight of maybe what caused the problems that we're looking at today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you're looking at here is an automation. And one of the coolest things I think of this tech is that knowing Marketing Cloud and knowing all the nuances of just an automation and the steps and activities, you're logging when a automation is altered in any context or way. So a step is added, a new activity is added into a step. If there's a modification made in an activity like an import activity or any of that nature, right?
Correct. Yes. Both at the definition and activity level as well as the specific automation level. So it's even going to tell you if an automation gets changed from active and running to paused. So when an automation gets paused and that automation gets picked up, it's going to make that diff check even at that level. So you'll see exactly when those kind of changes happen as well.
And I want to get to that because there's that forward future looking statement that we will eventually talk about. But I want to hit on, what do we cover in this Stasher application?
Sure. Let me just go back here really quick. So what we cover in Stasher is content builder. So any kind of content assets, your content blocks, your emails, everything there. We do shared content as well at the parent level business unit. We also do data extensions. So the metadata, the structural aspect of a data extension, shared data extensions as well. And then right now, Automation Studio. An Automation Studio is going to cover, again, that automation level as well as each of the dependencies at each step and activity. So that's currently what we're covering within Stasher. There is
what do you wish you covered? what do you wish that you covered you don't cover today?
Right now, Journey Builder. So right now, Journey Builder is something that we are looking at how to implement that into Stasher. Same thing with Cloud Pages. Cloud Pages is a tricky one because there's some limitations in the APIs there. But that's something that I'm very passionately trying to figure that out because I use Cloud Pages very heavily. So that's something that I would love to have covered as well. And then again, that forward-looking statement, we have been having those conversations around the data within the data extensions. So figuring out ways to safely, securely, and within the scope of what Marketing Cloud kind of offers, how to handle that backing up of data as well as a potential roadmap item.
And that would be optional if customers would want to enable that or not. And we've heard from our previous demos with large enterprises that backing up the data was something on the wish list. It was interesting for us, right, to learn that customers wanted this, to let back up data. Should we talk around, kind of just as Marketing Cloud experts as we are, why would a customer want to back up data when Marketing Cloud, to me, shouldn't be the single source of truth for some data? It should be in core, right? It should be in Sales Cloud or Service Cloud or in your data warehouse or somewhere else.
Yeah. The reality of it is that not everyone has those additional tools or resources at their organization's disposal. Having those additional systems is a best practice in many cases and something nice to have, but it's not always a reality. So even in the cases where you do have core or an external system that is your source of truth for that data, your marketing efforts all live within Marketing Cloud. And because of the high value on the marketing channel, the email channel, data coming in from 5, 10, 20 different sources into your system is hard to track. And external changes happen all the time. So, watching that data and having a way to restore that data would be something that's really beneficial, because when that data changes, you could have a value type that's changed or something that stops getting fed in. Having to have that data recoverable would be, a huge benefit for sure.
Yeah. Just looking at one of the questions in the chat too. Thanks for all your feedback in there. If you have a question, just ask.
Absolutely.
This is something that we're definitely around us having conversations a lot internally. Tony and I talk about Stasher all the time. Let's talk a little bit more about the data elements that we had on our roadmap instantly. Is one of the things that I commonly see is the number of records. Let's just call it health checks for now, right? Like what we're talking internally is, what if we had the ability to know when an automation was turned on, paused, deactivated, deleted out of nowhere, and we could have a notification via Slack, via Teams, via email, via SMS, wherever the notification needs to go, right? That's how we're talking internally. It's like, wouldn't it be so nice if we could get notified on the spot? And do you want to elaborate a little bit more on that, Tony, of that topic internally?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a solution that, to my knowledge, has been talked about a lot in our community. There's been a few implementations of different monitoring solutions, both through Salesforce and through, third-party vendors as well. But it is something that within Salesforce, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of changing assets. There's a lot of things that could go awry rather quickly. And the implementation of Stasher for the backups is one thing. And it's something that, we can offer on that daily or weekly basis. But having a short list of, I want to be notified with this automation if this automation goes paused for more than a day. Going through the core data extensions to say, this is the threshold of records that I should have in here. Alert me if something is off. There's a lot of metadata aspects that can tell you for some things, but without taking a deeper look at the record counts or the statuses and being notified immediately, things can be derailed for a longer period of time, unfortunately. So that's something we've been looking at for sure, is how do we take that mentality and in a more real-time fashion say, hey, this has been paused for 2 hours. Is this okay? Or this data extension was expecting, 100,000 records in it, and you only have 10. How we can identify those aspects and say, alert you where you want to be notified, without adding a whole lot of noise to your notifications.
Well, even just the reporting of that alone, right? To see a bar graph of your record counts for the day, and to just be able to put alert to say, if it's over or under 10% on a daily average, notify me type of thing, right? Like that's kind of like the how we look at it in the level of business function, but also from a level of technical, what we're looking at and talking about. So one of the things that we have here is the question from Kim asking, where's our current backup is stored? Is it kept in the Marketing Cloud account? Is it in the parent or in the BU? So let's talk about kind of our, I would say, magic of what this means. And Tony, you can kind of allude to the secret sauce if you like. But this is what we are here for, is to have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So the backups and anything that Stasher is capturing does not live in Marketing Cloud. The processes for the backups themselves, they don't live in Marketing Cloud. And the sole reason for that is, I like to use the analogy of doing the monitoring through Automation Studio, right? So what I've seen a lot is people building automations to monitor Automation Studio. Well, if that one automation goes down, your monitoring solution is no longer a monitoring solution. So if your backup solution is something that is housed within Salesforce Marketing Cloud and there's issues there, your backup solution is not a true backup solution. So nothing is stored within Salesforce Marketing Cloud for that reason, as well as some of the storage limitations around that as well. So yeah, that's my answer to that, I guess, without going too deep into that detail.
And we're looking at options. Like one of the stories internally that we're talking about is, what if we could host this potentially where the customer would like it to host? So being able to put it in potentially your GitHub account or in your Bitbucket or in your GitLab type of thing. So you have at least access to it whenever you need it. Want to touch more on that topic, or is that kind of a good spot?
I mean, that's pretty spot on. And the other note around it is we are relying on tried and true version controlled technologies. So it's not a roll your own solution to solve this problem that's already been solved for. We're relying on technology that has been around for, decades, years, whatever. Like it's not new technology.
Cool. There was a question asked around, is there a visual example that we might have around Automation Studio notifications? The person here sounds like they're very interested in what we were doing there, potentially talking about. I would say no, we don't have yet really a visual, but we're talking kind of like what that might look like to prospects and customers. So we look at people that have done demos with us one-on-one as conversations like this. And we also see that as our champions to make sure that if we build it this way, you'll help implement it that way too, that you want that feature when it's built. So we're kind of looking at a conversation to have around a round table to say, if we build it this way, would you use it? And that's kind of our path of building a product, is finding those champions that help us build a right product. So that's lessons learned from other tools that we built. We didn't ask, and that was a big no. A lot of wasted time in development on that. So we're trying to do it the right way, have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another question here was, notice that you have control version in SQL queries. How does it work in the case we have backups for the same automation? So I'm guessing, like, if I hear this right, if we had multiple configurations in Stash or backing up the same automation.
I mean, in that instance, if you have 2 or 3 different configurations that have the same automation within it, it'll across the board, they'll all be in synced, because whenever those configurations run, if they're on the same schedule, it's going to pull the same automation. It's going to check it against the same backup. They'll both have the same differences, things like that. If you have the other way to look at the question, because I was trying to figure out how it's phrased as well. The other aspect to it is, if you have your base configuration, after you back it up, you make changes to it, configuration runs, it'll make another commit down the line, another change, another commit. You have the drop down that'll have each different commit that you can go through and check that against what's in Marketing Cloud. So you can actually cycle through all of your commits as they happen, to see the differences as those changes have been made. So let us know if that answers the question, or if you want to clarify a little bit further.
The next one I really like is how does Stasher interact with version control, especially around commit changes and creating new branches, like in the Git world of feature branches and merging those. We've had conversations, so I'll let you handle that one, Tony.
Yeah. So right now, everything is in a linear commit fashion. And the reason for that is it's easier and it allows you to see those differences a little bit more clear when those commits are made. As it's running the backups, there's really not a need to do separate branches for each commit. So each time the backup runs, as long as there is a difference between what's in your previous state versus what's in Marketing Cloud at that time of the pull, it's just going to make a separate commit. And that's how it's allowing you to navigate through them within Stasher.
I will get to the other question here from Dominic, but let's talk a little bit on the topic around branches in the context of what we've been approached with from conversations is, could we improve the DevOps experience in Marketing Cloud? Sure. How to get from, say, one entirely sandbox instance of Marketing Cloud to a production instance of Marketing Cloud, or to be able to work in a same instance of Marketing Cloud from one BU to another BU and move a pipeline through the process. I know this is very futuristic where we're heading, but that's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, that is. So if anybody knows any of the other work that I've been fortunate enough to do, you and I have had the open source Builder package, right? So Builder was kind of like the start of like that DevOps world into Marketing Cloud. And along that line, what we're really hoping to do in Stasher is at some point in time, be able to have that continuous integration into a sandbox deploying out into another instance or another business unit. So it is definitely something that is on our desired roadmap to say. It's one of those things where we want to make sure we get it right. That's one of those instances where we want to have those conversations with the people that are asking for it to see what that looks like for a real world application of it. Because there's so many different ways to handle assets and develop within Marketing Cloud that we want to make sure it's universal enough that it can fit any kind of workflow. But that is definitely something we're aiming for sure.
And there's a lot of content, recorded content you have out there around Builder and how to use that as well, from what I imagine, right? So, I would definitely scour the internet if you're interested in Builder to first kind of take a look from Tony's perspective of how to use Builder from the command line. And then that's completely open source. You can look at the code base on GitHub, on NPM, right? So it's when we first got hands on it, I was like, wow, I feel like a developer for the first time in Marketing Cloud in a very unique way. So the way you built that, Tony, was absolutely incredible from a just level of command line of feeling like it's git pull, git push, deploy a package type of situation. So pretty cool.
Yeah, that was the goal.
And that was really our first iteration of Stasher. And then we kind of realized, wow, wouldn't it be nice if we had a UI on top of this? And that's what Stasher became, is the UI on top of the Builder. Then there were some other secret sauce that we had to build in Stasher that doesn't necessarily get open sourced, but you can kind of see that the framework and where our core framework is in the Builder packages.
Yeah, I think the goal for it was a lot of that, and also to provide a solution to non-developers as well. So being able to provide a solution across teams as well as that core developer usage. But yeah.
Let's talk about the hardest question in the room, pricing model. And I say the hardest question. Yeah, right. So I'm a technical developer, and this is why it's a hard question, is I'm not a businessman. I'm not a salesman. I'm learning to be, but one of the things that we've realized is that there is some pricing that makes sense to Salesforce in the world of like, let's cost per business unit. You can either go with that route, or you can go the cost per user model. So we are the cost per business unit at the moment. But I can tell you that our pricing is very fluid. And that's why when you go to our website, it says contact us, because we really don't know where to price this at today, to be very honest and frank. We're learning through that process. We're getting some advice from some people, but if we said like the price is starting at say $3,000 a year per business unit and you have 7 of them, that doesn't make any sense. So that's why we're really talking internally of like, well, what we offer today is a standard backup and recovery solution. Where we're heading, as you can hear, we have a big pipeline, a big feature list of things that we want to do down the road. So we're kind of in the space of like, we'll probably get to that price marker that makes more sense when we get there. But right now, the start backing up, is free. We have a freemium model. Let's say that. So we realize that our service and solutions should be implemented sooner rather than later, because you likely, if you have need for Stasher, then the problem is that it's too late, and you haven't been starting to back up your metadata or your just configuration, your implementation that you spent thousands and thousands of dollars on making that implementation proper. You want to start protecting it. And what our freemium offer allows you to do is create 2 configurations per business unit, no cost at all, and be able to select, I think it's up to 50 assets right now. But if you need an extended trial, or if you need like a kind of like, hey, I'm not ready to buy, just have a conversation. That's literally how we work. And then when you're ready to buy and you want to actually go through recovery process, there's, conversations of what makes sense. We're not trying to make our cost of a solution be 50% of what you're paying Marketing Cloud contract. That's the trick, right? Like Marketing Cloud has this sales tactic that is really effective and very powerful because it works. We all pay for it. But what we're trying to fit in is like, well, we offered this solution and we realize we're just a fraction of a feature to the solution entirely. So we can't be extremely profitable quickly. And what we are is a small startup studio making these kind of products and solutions. So we want first our very, very happy first 100 customers, say. So that's what we're trying to work for, is really to make sure that say, is our customers happy? Is the feature roadmap that we're building really aligned? And some money that is given to us helps us. Sorry, Nico. You say that again? Oh, where is the data stored? I'm sorry.
I think that was just somebody coming off mute accidentally. Oh,
no big deal. So let me go through. Hopefully that answers some questions around the pricing. It's an awkward one, the way of answering it, long-winded. But we're just people. We're human beings. We're really happy about our solution, and we're learning how to price. So that's something I want to just be candid about and transparent about. Where is the data stored? I would, let's say, like, we're storing metadata at this time. We're not storing actual data. So no PII. What we're in the process of is actually going through SOC 2 compliance as a whole, as a company even. So with that, we're trying to really be the attitude of like, we're not going to store PII to make the SOC 2 compliance really easy for us, because there's so much in the world of how that gets SOC 2 compliant. If you don't know what SOC 2 compliance means, it's basically the stamp of approval from enterprise companies that want to make sure that you have your standard processes and procedures down to a science, to a framework that is securing the data properly. And that's what we're really striving to make sure that we do. So without the SOC 2, we still have a process in place. We're just working towards a 6-month pilot of getting that stamp of approval that gives us that SOC 2.
Yeah, and regarding to Evangeline's question, none of, like Steve said, none of the actual data within the data extension is being captured at the current moment. That's something that is, on our roadmap that we're talking about, of how to actually implement that, and how to implement that in a way that, as it's being transferred, as it's being backed up, A, it's secure, and B, it's not going to, tax your API limits. So that's something we're definitely considering as well. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, we talked a lot about API limits, right? And I would say confidently, knowing the code base of what Tony's working on and the mindset through that, is we're being as efficient as humanly possible through these API calls. And that's something I can be confident in, that we're always monitoring how much API calls are we using, how many calls through that. And it's relatively small. Would you say, Tony, especially when we're going with full backup objects or full data objects?
Yeah. As we're working through strategically pulling the assets and stitching everything together, we are absolutely being cognizant of the amount of API calls that we're attempting to make into a client's instance, and being able to, as you just alluded to, we're working on the full object backup. So being able to back up literally every piece of metadata within your Marketing Cloud instance that the APIs will allow us, is going to help us streamline that even more, so we can do more of the processing on the tail end of it, more regularly. So, yeah, we're definitely very conscious about what kind of API calls we're making and how many we're making for sure.
I don't know if I feel like I'm beating around the bush around where is data stored as well. So I want to be just transparent through this process is that we are on GCP. So we're on Google Cloud Platform. We run through our processes through completely all of our products are on GCP. So everything we build goes through that. Our engineering team is well trained and versed around the GCP environment. We have our DevOps engineers that help us keep the lights on, keep their systems, let's say everything that's configurations is in code. So we really work through a process of diligence of making sure that if we need to spin this up outside of GCP or somewhere else, we have that kind of framework in place. And then beyond that, the metadata is stored in, I would say, like blobs of JSON type of mentality, just to give you kind of like some context there. And it's at a per configuration level. So if you were to delete a configuration out of Stasher, you actually delete that. There is no undo button for us. Mm-hmm. So you delete it through all of our systems entirely. So if, for instance, you had some API keys that you accidentally put in to your content and those API keys got version controlled through, the best way to make sure that the API keys are removed from our code base and everything else, because we don't want those either to be compliant, is to one, use our encryption tool, our security encryption tool that's rock solid with GCP's environments. Tony can go into that, but it's to delete the configuration entirely and rebuild. And if you can't do that, just reach out to support and we can work through a process and solution. We realize that might be a feature that we need to build out to support that long term better. But that's something that at the moment, realizing through the process is like, okay, we got some items to fix. But
yeah. And along the lines of what do I do if I'm backing up an automation that has a script activity that uses the REST API? So you're going to have your client ID, your client secret, all that kind of stuff. We actually do have an advanced security feature within Stasher when you are configuring your backup that you can actually go in, select the API keys, and add them to a configuration. And what that's going to do is it's going to do a replace for that key and redact it before it even hits any sort of version control. And then that configuration is AES 256 encrypted. So it is same password standard as any database password that gets stored. Highly secure, very encrypted. And then that gets stored with your configuration for that backup so that anytime you do a recovery or a backup is run, it's always going to see, is there an advanced configuration present? If so, it's going to work through it, do all the redaction before it even hits version control. And then when you're recovering it, it's going to replace it. So in Marketing Cloud, that's going to be back intact and fully valid. So you don't have to go hunting those down.
And that's the gold standard how to do that too. It's not like we're trying to recreate a custom wheel there. That's really what the standard practice is around that tooling. Storage costs in the Marketing Cloud, being able to mitigate those types of costs with Stasher. Does everything need to exist in Marketing Cloud in order for it to
so I think that's again alluding to the data extension data storage limits, if I'm not mistaken. If you want to clarify yes or no with that one. Yeah, I mean, we don't really know too much around how that feature would be implemented just yet.
Yeah, a little bit, right? I don't think we'll ever be a data hosting provider.
Yeah.
We've been talking with groups, the large companies that do offer that solution where they're the data hosting provider. They kind of tapped on us and say, hey, would that be something? And I would say that I think what we will route to is integrations, where you can integrate to a data hosting provider of your choice. I can't think of more than one off my top of my head, Tony. So if you have options on the list that you could talk out to?
I mean, it would be into like the big companies, GCP, AWS, like their hosting services is probably what we would end up integrating into.
and it would be yours. So as a customer, your GCP environment, your AWS buckets, that we would store that information and be able to tap into that when needed to recover data back. But that would keep the keys to you, so you own the data and it's encrypted at rest, or all those choices there. But it also allows you to integrate, like bringing your own data warehouse mentality. So being able to tap into that. I think that would be the route that we definitely see us going, is that space of not trying to get into a space that we're uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I think in that instance, it would be more of, and again, this is big forward-looking statements. It would be more of like that ETL process, hand in helping you achieve that solution. Just wherever you want to host that data, that's where it would go. And again, what that really kind of looks like, not 100% sure. It's very early conversations around that, but it is conversations that we are having internally for sure.
I don't know if we even mentioned we launched in June of this year.
Yeah.
So we thought we had this bulletproof and like, yeah, everybody's going to want this. But then we learned from quickly that there was more that people would want. And that's great. We love the feedback, but we're just kind of trying to figure out how to move forward in that pace properly without undoing.
Yeah.
I think I don't have any more questions on top of my mind that are frequent. Tony, do you think of anything?
I think not off the top of my head. No, I think we've covered pretty much everything that we have ever been asked about this product.
Yeah. And we hope that everyone enjoyed this kind of conversation. It was, I think it's unique in the way that we're trying to present this, is not being salesy, really showing underneath the hood and being as transparent as we can. But also being smart about, we're a business and trying to be profitable. So please help us. This is a fun product and project, but it is independently funded. There is no outside funding. So we are 100% bootstrapped and loving the rocket ship to the moon. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah. And if you guys have any follow-up questions, if you guys think of anything else after this, or just want to talk about some of the features that we are contemplating on the roadmap, reach out to us on Slack, shoot us an email. If you want more in-depth conversations and a more in-depth demo, reach out to us on stasher.io/demo, and we're more than happy to have those conversations. I'm on Email Geek Slack. Steve's on Email Geek Slack. We're both on How to SFMC Slack. We're everywhere. So feel free to reach out on any of the Slack channels or email or, any of that. Love talking shop and having conversations.
Well put. Thanks, Susanna.
Thank you guys so much. I think this is really, brilliant. And I have to tell you that the number of times I had to build automations that were monitoring other automations, or Journey Builder, or even automations that were monitoring how many emails got sent every day and the deviation between different days, and then based on that sending some email alerts. I really love the monitoring aspect of it, because building solution in Marketing Cloud to monitor Marketing Cloud itself, it's not really 100% reliable. So yeah.
And that's the conversation that I've had with a handful of people, is you can there are ways to build similar solutions within the platform. I've built them previously. I've worked at agencies where other companies have built them. What we're trying to really achieve through taking the solution, standardizing it, and moving it outside of Marketing Cloud is, you're not having Marketing Cloud watch Marketing Cloud.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's really the aim of it for sure.
That's the way to go. Okay, well, guys, thank you so much. I really loved what I saw. Do we have any more questions from the audience? I don't think so. If not, then I will take over the screen for a quick moment. One more time. So I hope you can see it now. So before we finish, I would like to offer you all a chance to win some Salesforce swag and Salesforce certification vouchers. If you're interested, follow this link and sign up using the form. I will notify the winners by the end of this week. I think I can also just okay, I will share the I will share the link in the chat in a minute. And since this is the last meeting of our group this year, I just wanted to thank you all for joining our meetings. I hope you found them valuable. We will resume regular meetings in February next year, and as soon as we have some dates and speakers lined up, I will announce them on the Trailblazer Community Group's website, and I will also post them on my personal LinkedIn. So stay tuned, and thank you everyone for joining us today and for joining all the meetings throughout the whole year. So thank you for this, and if you could just wait one more minute, I will paste the lottery link in the chat for you, and that's it for today.